What if you were driving down a road at night when suddenly a mutant Bambi attacks you? I know, it doesn't sound that scary, but this animal drank toxic waste, causing it to grow monstrously big, get super buff, and develop a taste for human flesh. Now you need to figure out how to escape the forest before it's too late. What would you do in this situation? Well, this is the story of Bambi, The Reckoning, the latest flick set in the Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey universe. Meaning yes, this is another gem from our beloved ITN. No. Today we're gonna break down this masterpiece, save you 1 hour and 20 minutes of your life, count how many kills we had, and of course, I'll give you the best tips on how to take down evil Bambi. But before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, because by the end of the year we'll be getting Pinocchio Unstrung, another production from the same universe, and you know I'm covering that on the channel. And lastly, grab the horns your ex left on your head and smash that like button. The movie kicks off with a book left in the forest that magically opens up to tell Bambi's story. To keep it short, when Bambi was a kid, he saw his mom get shot by a hunter, but he managed to escape. Years later, he met a lady Bambi, and together they had a little fawn. Bambi's life has been pretty rough, especially since his wife got run over, and he didn't even get a chance to mourn because someone came up behind him and knocked him out with a shovel. Yeah, I know, it doesn't really make sense, but let's keep moving. When Bambi wakes up, he realizes the fawn is missing and is pretty shaken up. In an attempt to hydrate, he ends up drinking from a river. What he didn't know was that the water was contaminated with toxic waste from a company, which triggers a mutation in Bambi. In the present day, we meet 3 hunters, the leader of whom is named Michael. The other 2 are Tyler and Eddie. Their mission: to hunt down Bambi because they're working for a mysterious guy who wants to wipe out the species to keep the police from finding out about the toxic waste spill in the river. To carry out the mission, they spread decoys through the forest to attract Bambi. Meanwhile, we meet a mom named Zana. Along with her, there's Benji, Xana's son. Benji's dad had planned to pick him up so they could spend the weekend at the family's cabin, but then he calls Zana and says he wants to cancel. Zana is furious with her husband because she was hoping he'd show Benji some support. Seeing Benji pout, Zana decides to call a cab and take him to his grandmother's house, promising that his dad is waiting for them. I don't know, but I think calling a cab to cross part of the country isn't going to be cheap. Whatever, because along the way, the cab driver talks more than my grandma and gets distracted. This makes him miss the mutant Bambi running across the road, and the creature ends up flipping the car. The cab driver counts as one of our hams, but unfortunately, Zana and Benji manage to escape into the forest. If I were in Bambi's mutant, rabid, rage-chasing situation, I'd try climbing one of the trees and wait until morning, when the visibility would be much better. That way, I could outsmart the beast, and even if it saw me, maybe it wouldn't be able to knock down the tree because the roots would be pretty strong. But whatever, they decide to run through the beast's hunting grounds instead. Meanwhile, we see Benji's dad's side of the family waiting for them. The names of these characters, with the charisma of a smashed bullet, are Benji's dad's brothers, Andrew and Joshua, Andrew's wife, Harriet, their son Harrison, and finally, Mary, Benji's grandmother, who's suffering from severe dementia but somehow seems to know what happened to Bambi in the past. Anyway, Zana and Benji arrive at the house, freaking out and revealing the mutant's existence, but the family isn't buying it. The problem is, they can't call the cops because Andrew recently deactivated the landline, and the cell service conveniently doesn't work in the area. Since Zana didn't see the cab driver get wrecked, she still believes he's alive, so she tries to leave the house to help him, but Joshua says she's hurt and volunteers to go instead. Hold up, the woman and child show up all beat up, and yet Joshua still wants to walk into the forest. In that case, he should have grabbed Andrew's trailer and driven it to the accident site. That way he'd be protected from direct attacks by the beast and could confirm if the cab driver survived or not. But since Joshua's an idiot, no sooner does he enter the forest than Tyler shoots him in the face, having mistaken him for a 3-meter tall deer. Michael chews out his employee and tells him he doesn't have the qualifications for this job. Meanwhile, we see Zana washing up in the bathroom. When she looks behind her, she sees Bambi's head stuck to the wall, suggesting the husband's family has some experience hunting in the forest. That's when Mary freezes in the living room window, catching Benji's attention. He looks outside and sees Bambi staring right at them. The kid's quick on the uptake and warns Zana that the animal could come inside, which happens as the beast smashes through the window. Harriet, Andrew, and Harrison get a serious jump scare as they get cornered in the kitchen. At this point, they could have grabbed some trusty old machetes to trap Bambi and take down the mutant. But no, they all scatter in different directions. Most of the family manages to take refuge in Andrew's trailer, but Harriet is a bit slow and ends up getting stuck in the bathroom. She manages to escape through the window, but gets headbutted by the back door. Still, Harriet runs through the yard, but she makes another mistake. The woman decides to run in slippers, which makes her slower than she should be. In a situation like this, every second counts. She should have just ripped off those slippers and ran in her socks to get to the trailer faster. But since she's as clueless as Claire from Jurassic World 1, she ends up getting headbutted, which splits her body in half. Realizing he can make a Tinder profile, Andrew shrugs and steps on the gas. The problem is that Bambi trained for the Olympics with Usain Bolt, which means he's getting closer and closer to the car. Noticing this, Harrison throws a few things at the animal, but it doesn't do anything. At this point, everyone inside the trailer could have done the same, which would have definitely slowed Bambi down, but yeah, forget about it. Unfortunately, Andrew pulls some fast and furious moves and manages to shake the animal off, allowing the family to escape. Meanwhile, the hunters arrive at Mary's house and realize the damage Bambi's caused. This is when Michael realizes Harriet miraculously is still alive. Well, was alive, because he ends her suffering by stabbing her with a knife. The movie goes back to the family with zero charisma, and then of course another convenient moment happens. A tree falls right in the middle of the road, blocking their path. Andrew starts having a meltdown and blames everything that's happening on his brother, who invited everyone to spend the weekend at the cabin because he didn't want to be alone with Benji. This leaves the kid pretty sad, but honestly, I don't care about that. Anyway, Andrew could have easily gone around the trunk because there's plenty of space on the side of the road, but no, he has a better idea. Get out of the car to tie a rope around the trunk and pull the tree out of the way. Xana, Andrew, and Harrison get to work, while Benji has to put up with the crazy grandma in the car. The grandma mistakes Benji for his dad and calls him Simon. This makes the little kid ask where his dad is, and the only thing I can think of at that moment is, dude, this is the last person in the world who's going to have an answer for you. Xana heads back to the trailer and tells Benji to keep his hands on the wheel to watch the road and warn them if Bambi shows up again. Be careful what you wish for. Bambi shows up right in front of the trailer and, wait, where'd the tree go? Looks like the digital effects department missed that one. Forget it, because Xana tells Benji to step on it, and he does. As the trailer picks up speed, the rope that's tied to Andrew's foot starts to pull him along the road. Harrison realizes he's all alone, and as Bambi gets closer, he runs into the woods. He accidentally falls into a pile of poop left by Bambi, and the smell of the dung helps mask his presence as the predator gets closer. Bambi loses interest in the poopy kid and walks away. One way to defeat the movie and escape with your life is exactly the same way Arnold Schwarzenegger camouflaged himself from the predator. In this case, Harrison should have smeared himself with deer dung to casually walk through the forest. Forget it, because soon we realize that the kid is a total jerk. A kind rabbit approaches him, and out of nowhere, Harrison kicks the poor rodent. He quickly regrets it as more rabbits show up to settle the score with Harrison, and we find out that the furry creatures also mutated after drinking the river water. To top it off, Harrison falls into a bear trap, and the kid's head gets stuck, allowing the hellish rabbits to take advantage and feast. At this point, Harrison could have used his arms to grab the rabbits and take out these pests, but his hands just stop working because the script said so. Meanwhile, we see Benji, Mary, and Xana lost in the woods. That's when the kid remembers he found a flare in the trailer and lights it up, revealing that the trio has wandered into Bambi's lair, which is full of bones from people he's hunted and a half-fresh ham hanging from one of the trees. The flare attracts Bambi, who bursts in with a vengeance. The trio runs back to the road, where they bump into Michael and the rest of the crew. Michael says he'll take them to a shelter so they can call the cops, but the hunters' intentions clearly aren't the best. Here comes a plot twist, as when they arrive at the location, we find out that Simon, Benji's dad, is the one running the whole operation. The kid hugs his dad, but he must stink because Simon clearly recoils in disgust. He then rips into Xana, saying that they shouldn't have come there. And then comes another huge revelation. Simon was the guy who ran over Bambi's wife and kidnapped Bambi Jr. Not only that, but the scumbag was dumping toxic waste in the river to make a living. Benji overhears all the drama and realizes that his dad doesn't care about him. This leads him to make the most intelligent decision of the moment. Stay safe safe inside the shelter? Of course not, because he runs straight into the forest, even though he knows an angry Bambi is waiting for him. Also spying on the ex-couple's argument are Michael and Joe, another mercenary who's definitely the dumbest character in the film, but hang tight, you'll understand why soon. The hunters set their final plan in motion, which includes using Bambi's fawn to lure the father in so they can fill him full of bullets in the process. But Zana doesn't want to get involved and tries to steal Michael's satellite phone to call the cops. The leader of the hunters doesn't take kindly to this and points a gun at her, ordering her to shut up. Zana clearly isn't the sharpest tool in the shed, as she could have waited for Michael to leave the room and swiped the phone without him noticing. But no, she tries to steal the equipment with him watching. Anyway, we see Tyler and Eddie dragging Bambi Jr.'s cage into the woods, and I don't quite get what the plan is here. Are they just going to wait in an exposed area for the beast to show up? That's pure stupidity, because the two hunters would probably get wiped out before they could even react. What I'm saying is they should have left the cage there and moved away from the area. Then they could have taken 2 sniper rifles and hidden in a high spot. As soon as Bambi was in their sights, they could have filled him with bullets in perfect safety, but of course that doesn't happen because Tyler says he needs to take a leak. If he did it inside the house, I wouldn't complain, but no. The idiot decides to pee in the middle of the forest. It doesn't even take a minute for Bambi to show up and smash Tyler's head without hesitation. Hearing the noise in the forest, Eddie goes to investigate. Notice in this scene, he's armed with a double-barrel shotgun, but as soon as he sees Tyler's body, he drops the gun to the ground and starts throwing up. Bambi appears next, and all Eddie needed to do was pick up the gun and shoot the beast at point-blank range. But no, the clown decides to run away empty-handed. Eddie hides in an abandoned car, but Bambi rips one of the doors off. At this point, Eddie could have escaped through the passenger side, but forget about it, he'd rather be devoured by the beast for no reason. Meanwhile, we see Benji crying his eyes out until he stumbles upon Bambi Jr.'s cage and decides to take the animal. Noticing her son's absence, Zana rushes after the little rascal, leaving Mary behind, who gets a visit from Bambi. Since the old lady's dementia is hitting hard, she doesn't even realize the danger she's in. She only doesn't become lunch because Joe makes some noise in the next room, which catches the beast's attention. Bambi decides to change the menu and tries to eat Joe instead. The woman loses it and decides to shoot 2 gas cylinders, which turns Joe into a BBQ as the house explodes in style. Okay, let's analyze the stupidity of this moron. Wouldn't it have been easier to just shoot the beast? I say this because the door hadn't been completely knocked down, which was still serving as makeshift protection for her. Secondly, Bambi's head was completely exposed, and only someone with aggressive conjunctivitis would have missed the target. Forget all that, because in the meantime, Michael comes face to face with Benji and demands he hand over Bambi Jr., but the kid's gotten attached to the creature and refuses to follow the hunter's orders. Then Simon and Zana show up at the party. Benji's dad tells him to give Bambi Jr. to Michael, but Benji disobeys again. Before anything can happen, Bambi springs into action and drags Michael on a tour of the forest. That's when Zana notices that the criminal dropped the satellite phone on the ground, but Simon is faster and grabs the radio. He says he won't let Zana ruin his life and won't be sent to prison. That's when Benji wets his pants as Bambi gets ready to devour him. Simon could have been the alpha male and protected his family, but instead, he runs away, leaving Zana and Benji to fend for themselves. The boy's mom plans to run and distract the beast, hoping to save her son in the process, but she realizes that all Bambi really wants is to get his fawn back. So, she and Benji hand the fawn over to the animal, and Bambi agrees to spare their lives. But then Michael shows up and shoots Bambi, mortally wounding him. Out of nowhere, someone pops a shot right in the face of the last remaining hunter, and we find out it's Mary, who left the house before the explosion. For some reason I don't fully understand, the woman's dementia is cured, and she suddenly remembers her grandson's name. Look at that, a miracle of science. Blowing someone's face off with a shotgun now cures Alzheimer's. Unfortunately, Bambi doesn't survive the gunshot wounds and bids farewell to Bambi Jr., who mourns the loss of his father. Meanwhile, we see Simon fleeing in a car when he encounters a mutant rabbit that somehow managed to get in. Before he can figure out what the hell is going on, the rodent leaps at his throat and devours him without hesitation. Simon could have easily grabbed the rabbit with his hands, but who cares, right?
Nobody cares.
The Reckoning surprisingly got good reviews from critics and audiences. My opinion, this movie is something. It's not exactly bad, but it didn't manage to hold my attention. For an IT the End movie, the CGI is competent and makes the creature look threatening. The performances of the main actors are solid, and the mother-son relationship between Zana and Benji is well written. The highlight of the film is definitely the violent and graphic finishes. On the downside, the script fails to make the most of the dark forest to create tense situations. Because of this, I'd give Bambi a 5.5 out of 10. At the box office, the film flopped, having cost $325,000 but only grossing $213,000. The production will have to make up for that through digital sales, rentals, and streaming licensing. Please stick around until the end to check out the Tales of Terror playlist, where I've added videos from other movies in this same universe. No more beating around the bush, let's get to the body count. The total body count for the film is 11, and the Golden Ham Trophy goes to Tyler. Don't forget to like the video. I hope you had a great time, and see you on the next one.